I discovered my wife secretly planned to maximize alimony with spreadsheets, so I collected evidence and destroyed her fraudulent divorce scheme coldly. What I found wasn't just divorce papers or lawyer contacts. It was a full-scale financial operation designed to extract maximum alimony from me, complete with spreadsheets, timelines, and strategies that would make Wall Street analysts jealous. It started innocently enough. My laptop had crashed during a work presentation, and I needed to finish a client proposal. She was in the shower, so I grabbed her MacBook from the kitchen counter. Simple enough. But when I opened it, instead of a clean desktop, I was greeted by a folder labeled Future Planning, sitting right there in the middle of the screen. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked it open. The first file was called California Alimony Calculator, and it was a detailed spreadsheet with our combined income, assets, and projections for different divorce scenarios. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was seeing my name listed under Target Annual Income, with notes about career progression, estimates, and asset accumulation timeline. I scrolled through more files. A 10-year strategy caught my attention immediately. Inside was a detailed plan explaining how California law favors longer marriages for alimony purposes, and how she needed to maintain marriage until year 10 minimum for maximum benefit extraction. We were currently at year 8. My hands tightened on the laptop as I opened another file, Sacrifice Documentation. It was a meticulous record of every time she had supposedly given up career opportunities for our marriage. The problem was, half of these sacrifices were completely fabricated. She had documented turning down a promotion that never existed, and claimed she had abandoned graduate school plans that she had never even mentioned to me. The final file made my blood run cold. Dependency evidence building. It outlined a strategy to create paper trails, proving she had become financially dependent on me, including instructions to quit her part-time consulting work and transfer all her personal expenses to our joint account. The document even included a timeline showing she had been implementing this plan for the past 6 months. I sat there staring at the screen, realizing that while I had been working extra hours to build our future together, she had been building a case against me. Every kiss goodnight, every I love you over breakfast, every discussion about our future had been happening, while she was calculating how to financially destroy me. The bathroom door opened, and I heard her footsteps approaching. I closed the laptop and set it back exactly where I found it. But something fundamental had shifted in that moment. I wasn't looking at my wife anymore. I was looking at someone who had been playing a completely different game while I thought we were on the same team. She walked into the kitchen with a towel wrapped around her hair, smiling that same smile I had fallen in love with years ago. But now it looked different. Now it looked calculated. "Did you finish your presentation?" she asked, moving to start the coffee maker. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "All done." She had no idea that I had just discovered her entire operation. And as I watched her go through her morning routine, acting like the loving wife, I realized that I too could play this game. But I wasn't going to play it her way. I was going to play it better. The irony wasn't lost on me. She thought she was being strategic, but she had just handed me the blueprint to her entire plan. And in California, evidence of fraudulent behavior in divorce proceedings can completely flip the script on who gets what. She wanted to calculate alimony maximization. Fine. I was about to calculate something much more important: maximum speed to exit with minimum financial damage to myself. The game had changed, and she didn't even know it yet. The next few days were like living in a psychological thriller, where I was both the detective and the target. I maintained perfect normalcy on the surface, while conducting my own investigation into just how deep this operation went. Every conversation, every gesture, every moment of supposed intimacy was now viewed through the lens of her calculated deception. I started by retracing her recent behavior patterns. Those late-night work calls she had been taking in the other room suddenly made sense. The way she had been encouraging me to take on more clients, pushing me to work longer hours while she supported me from home. Even her sudden interest in our finances, asking detailed questions about my income projections and business growth plans. It was all research for her exit strategy. The breakthrough came when I accessed our shared cloud storage under the guise of organizing family photos. Hidden in a folder labeled Recipes were dozens of screenshots from legal advice websites and divorce forums. She had been active on platforms like Smart Divorce for Women and Maximizing Your Settlement, using a fake profile name. I scrolled through months of her posts. She had been asking specific questions about California's spousal support laws, inquiring about the best ways to document financial dependence, and even seeking advice on how to prepare for a high-asset divorce without arousing suspicion. One post particularly caught my attention. How long should I wait before filing if I want to maximize alimony? Currently at 8 years. Husband makes 6 figures. I've been building dependency case for 6 months. Advisors say wait until 10 years, but I'm getting impatient. The responses were a roadmap of manipulation tactics. Other women were coaching her on everything from documenting fake job rejections to creating artificial expenses that would demonstrate her financial reliance on me. One user had even suggested she start therapy to create a paper trail of emotional damage caused by the eventual divorce. That explained her sudden interest in couples counseling that she had mentioned last month. I had thought she was trying to strengthen our marriage. She was actually building evidence for why she deserved permanent alimony. The most disturbing discovery was a private message thread with someone called California Lawyer 2018. The conversation revealed she had already had an initial consultation with a divorce attorney 3 months ago. They had discussed timing, asset protection strategies, and how to position herself as the disadvantaged spouse. The lawyer had advised her to quit her consulting work immediately and transfer all her personal expenses to our joint accounts. This was already done. She had also been told to document any sacrifices she made for the marriage and to avoid any behavior that might suggest she was planning the divorce. That's why she had been so affectionate lately. That's why she had been cooking my favorite meals and planning romantic evenings. It wasn't love, it was legal strategy. I needed professional help, but I had to be smart about it. I couldn't use our joint accounts or any traceable methods. During my lunch break, I drove to a different part of town and paid cash for a consultation with a divorce attorney who specialized in high-asset cases and financial fraud. The lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s, listened to my situation with the focused attention of someone who had seen this type of manipulation before. When I showed her screenshots of the files and forum posts, her expression hardened. "This is financial fraud," she said simply. "Your wife is creating false evidence to manipulate the court system. In California, this kind of behavior can not only void any alimony claims, but can also result in her being responsible for your legal fees." She explained that I needed to document everything without alerting her to my knowledge. The key is to let her continue implementing her plan while you build an airtight case against her. Every false document she creates, every fabricated sacrifice she records, it all works in your favor if you can prove the deception. I left that office with a clear strategy. I would play the role of the oblivious husband while methodically collecting evidence of her fraud. Every spreadsheet, every forum post, every fake documentation would become ammunition in my own calculated response. That evening, she greeted me with a kiss and asked about my day with what I now recognized as performative concern. She had made dinner, lit candles, and was wearing the dress I had complimented months ago. The whole scene felt like a carefully staged production. "I've been thinking about us," she said over dinner, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "About our future together. I want to make sure we're building something that lasts." The irony was suffocating. She was talking about building a future while actively planning to demolish it. But I played my part perfectly, smiling and agreeing while mentally cataloging every word as potential evidence of her deception. After dinner, she excused herself to make a phone call. I watched her disappear into the bedroom, probably to update her divorce forum friends on her progress. Meanwhile, I used the time to photograph more of her documents and save additional evidence to my secure cloud account. The student was about to become the teacher, and she had no idea that her entire operation was about to be used against her. The conspiracy was bigger than I had imagined. It wasn't just my wife orchestrating this elaborate financial heist. She had recruited her sister as her primary accomplice, and together they had created a sophisticated operation that would have impressed criminal masterminds. The discovery happened during what should have been a routine family dinner. Her sister had come over for our monthly get-together, and while they were in the kitchen preparing dessert, I overheard fragments of their conversation that made my blood freeze. "The backdated invoices are ready," her sister was saying in hushed tones. "I've created consulting contracts that show you've been turning down lucrative opportunities for the past 2 years. We just need to be careful about the dates." I moved closer to the kitchen doorway, pretending to check my phone while straining to hear more. "What about the financial dependency documentation?" my wife asked. "Perfect. I've prepared statements showing your personal income declined significantly after you prioritized the marriage. The expense transfers to your joint account create a clear pattern of financial reliance. Any auditor would conclude you became economically dependent on him." Her sister wasn't just helping with emotional support, she was actively manufacturing evidence, using her accounting background to create fraudulent financial documents that would support my wife's alimony claims. The conversation continued with clinical precision. They discussed timeline adjustments, evidence placement, and even how to handle potential questions from divorce attorneys. Her sister had researched California family law extensively and was coaching my wife on exactly how to present herself as the financially disadvantaged spouse. "Remember," her sister said, "you need to maintain the Loving Wife Act for at least another year. The 10-year mark is crucial for permanent alimony eligibility. After that, you can gradually start creating distance. Maybe suggest marriage counseling to show you tried to save the marriage." I retreated to the living room, my mind racing. This wasn't just deception. This was conspiracy to commit fraud against the court system. They were literally manufacturing evidence to steal money from me through false legal claims. Over the next week, I began tracking their communications more carefully. I discovered they had been meeting regularly at coffee shops to discuss strategy, always paying cash and avoiding any digital trails. They had even created a shared email account using a fake name to coordinate their efforts. The depth of the operation was staggering. Her sister had helped create fake job rejection letters, backdated consulting contracts, and even fabricated expense reports that painted a picture of my wife sacrificing her career for our marriage. They had constructed an entire false narrative spanning years, complete with documentation that would be difficult for any attorney to challenge without prior knowledge of the deception. But their biggest mistake was underestimating me. They assumed I would remain the oblivious husband, working hard while they systematically planned my financial destruction. They never considered that I might be intelligent enough to uncover their scheme and strategic enough to turn it against them. I started documenting their meetings, photographing the fraudulent documents, and even recording some of their conversations when they thought I was out of earshot. Every piece of evidence they created became evidence of their conspiracy. The most damning discovery came when I found email exchanges between my wife and her sister discussing how to gaslight me into believing I was responsible for her career sacrifices. They had literally planned conversations designed to make me feel guilty about her supposed professional losses, creating emotional manipulation to support their legal strategy. One email from her sister was particularly revealing. "Remember, the goal is to make him believe he owes you this money. If he feels guilty about your sacrifices, he'll be more likely to accept the alimony demands without fighting." Emotional manipulation is just as important as the financial documentation. They had weaponized my love for her against me. Every moment of guilt I had felt about her career choices, every time I had tried to support her professionally, every discussion about our future together had been orchestrated to serve their ultimate goal of financial extraction. The psychological warfare was sophisticated, but they had made one crucial error. They had documented their entire operation, creating a paper trail of fraud that would destroy their case and potentially result in criminal charges. As I watched them continue their charade during family dinners and social gatherings, I realized I wasn't just dealing with a divorce anymore. I was dealing with organized financial crime, and they had no idea that their intended victim had become their judge, jury, and executioner. The game had evolved from simple deception to criminal conspiracy, but they were still playing by their old rules while I had moved on to an entirely different level of strategy. They thought they were manipulating me. I was about to show them what real manipulation looked like. The acceleration of their plan was unmistakable. Like a predator sensing weakness, my wife began implementing more aggressive tactics, apparently convinced that I remained completely oblivious to her operation. What she didn't realize was that every move she made was being carefully documented and would soon be used to completely destroy her case. The shift started with her sudden career martyrdom performance. She began making dramatic declarations about how she had given up everything for our marriage, complete with tears and emotional breakdowns that felt rehearsed. During one particularly theatrical moment, she claimed she had turned down a promotion that would have doubled her salary because she wanted to focus on supporting my dreams. The problem was, I knew this promotion never existed. I had already verified with her former employer that no such opportunity had been offered. She was literally crying over fictional sacrifices, but the performance was so convincing that even I might have believed it if I hadn't known the truth. Her sister's coaching was evident in every move. She started creating evidence in real time, making phone calls within my earshot to decline imaginary job opportunities. One evening, she even staged a conversation with someone she claimed was a headhunter, dramatically turning down a lucrative position because she couldn't abandon her husband during his crucial business growth phase. The entire conversation was fiction. I knew because I had checked her phone records, and the call had been to a disconnected number. She was performing for an audience of one, trying to create witness testimony of her supposed sacrifices. But the most audacious move came when she started manipulating our financial records in real time. She began transferring money from her personal savings to our joint account, then immediately using it for household expenses. On paper, it created the appearance that she was contributing her own money to support our lifestyle when, in reality, she was just moving money around to create false evidence of financial dependency. She also started keeping detailed records of every domestic task she performed, timing herself doing housework and cooking, and creating logs that painted her as a full-time homemaker when she had actually been working part-time consulting jobs until recently. The documentation was designed to support claims that she had provided non-monetary contributions to the marriage that justified permanent alimony. Meanwhile, I was conducting my own parallel operation. While she was busy creating false evidence, I was documenting the creation of that false evidence. Every staged phone call, every manipulated financial record, every fabricated sacrifice was being recorded and verified. My attorney had advised me to start protecting my assets without arousing suspicion. I began by adjusting my business structure, creating legitimate legal protections that would shield my income from her fraudulent claims. I also started maintaining detailed records of her actual activities, proving that her claims of financial dependency were manufactured. The psychological warfare intensified during this period. She became increasingly affectionate, constantly reminding me of her sacrifices and how much she had given up for our marriage. She would bring up specific instances of her supposed career losses during intimate moments, trying to embed guilt into our relationship. One night, she even suggested we renew our wedding vows, claiming she wanted to recommit to our partnership before our 10-year anniversary. The timing was perfect for her legal strategy, creating additional evidence of her commitment to the marriage right before she planned to destroy it. But the most disturbing escalation came when she started recording our conversations. I discovered a voice recording app on her phone that had been actively documenting our private discussions. She was creating an audio library of moments where I supposedly acknowledged her sacrifices or expressed gratitude for her support. The recordings were edited, taking my words out of context to support her narrative. Comments about appreciating her help with household tasks were transformed into admissions that I couldn't function without her. Casual remarks about her career choices became evidence that I had pressured her to abandon her professional goals. She was literally rewriting the history of our marriage, creating a false narrative supported by manufactured evidence, fraudulent documentation, and manipulated recordings. The operation had evolved from simple financial planning to systematic fraud, but every step of her escalation was being documented by someone who understood the game better than she did. While she was creating false evidence to support her case, I was creating real evidence to destroy hers. The most satisfying part was watching her confidence grow as she believed her plan was working perfectly. She had no idea that her target had become her hunter, and that every move she made was being turned into ammunition for the final confrontation. She thought she was building an unassailable case for maximum alimony. I was building an unassailable case for fraud charges. The difference was that my evidence was real, documented, and legally devastating. The countdown to confrontation had begun, and she was walking directly into a trap of her own making. The confrontation came exactly as her forum posts had predicted. She chose a Friday evening, prepared an elaborate dinner, and created what she clearly believed was the perfect setting for her big reveal. She had no idea she was walking into an execution chamber of her own design. The performance began with her usual theatrical setup: candles, wine, my favorite meal, and that dress she wore whenever she wanted something. She spent the entire dinner building up to her moment, dropping hints about important conversations in our future together. After dessert, she took a deep breath and delivered what was clearly a rehearsed speech. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us," she began, her voice trembling with what I now recognized as calculated emotion. "About what I've sacrificed for this marriage and what I deserve in return." She pulled out a folder that I knew contained her carefully prepared demands. The moment she had been building toward for months was finally here. "I think we need to discuss divorce," she continued, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. "I've sacrificed my career, my earning potential, my independence for this marriage. I've supported your dreams while putting mine on hold. I deserve to be compensated for that." She opened the folder and began reading from what was clearly a lawyer-prepared script. She wanted permanent alimony equal to 40% of my income, half of all marital assets, and coverage for her living expenses during the divorce proceedings. She presented these demands as if they were reasonable requests, rather than the result of months of fraudulent planning. "I've documented everything," she said with growing confidence. My career sacrifices, my financial dependency, my contributions to your success. Any court will see that I'm entitled to these terms." She sat back in her chair, clearly expecting me to be shocked, perhaps to argue or negotiate. She had probably imagined this moment countless times, envisioning me as the guilty husband accepting responsibility for her fictional sacrifices. Instead, I started laughing. Not angry laughter or bitter laughter, but genuine amusement at the absurdity of watching someone walk so confidently into their own destruction. "You've documented everything?" I asked, still chuckling. "That's perfect. I've been hoping you would document everything." Her confident expression faltered slightly, but she pressed on. "I know this is difficult to hear, but I have extensive records of my sacrifices, the job opportunities I turned down, the career advancement I abandoned, the financial dependency I developed supporting your ambitions." I reached into my own briefcase and pulled out a much thicker folder. "You mean these job opportunities that never existed? These career sacrifices that are completely fabricated? This financial dependency that you artificially created?" The color drained from her face as I began laying out printed copies of her forum posts, her fraudulent documents, and her sister's emails. "Let me read you something interesting. This is from your post on Smart Divorce for Women 3 months ago. How long should I wait before filing if I want to maximize alimony? Currently at 8 years, husband makes 6 figures. I've been building dependency case for 6 months. She tried to interrupt, but I continued. Or this email from your sister, the backdated invoices are ready. I've created consulting contracts that show you've been turning down lucrative opportunities for the past 2 years. I pulled out photographs of her fake job rejection letters, copies of her manufactured expense reports, and transcripts of her staged phone calls. Did you really think I wouldn't notice that you called a disconnected number when you pretended to turn down that headhunter position? Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. The confident woman who had been making demands minutes earlier was now staring at evidence of her own criminal behavior. "I have recordings of you and your sister planning this entire operation," I continued, playing a clip of them discussing how to gaslight me into feeling guilty about her fictional sacrifices. "I have documentation of every fraudulent document you created, every false claim you fabricated, every lie you told." She tried to recover, attempting to portray herself as the victim. "You were spying on me. You violated my privacy." "I was protecting myself from fraud," I replied calmly. "And speaking of fraud, let me explain what's going to happen next. You're going to face criminal charges for conspiracy to commit fraud against the court system. Your sister is going to face charges as your accomplice, and instead of getting alimony from me, you're going to be paying my legal fees." I pulled out the final document from my folder. "This is a complaint I've prepared for the district attorney's office, documenting your entire operation. Financial fraud, perjury, conspiracy, and attempted theft through false legal claims. In California, this kind of behavior doesn't just void alimony claims. It can result in felony charges." The woman who had been so confident in her calculated plan was now sitting in stunned silence, realizing that her intended victim had outmaneuvered her at every step. "You wanted to play games with the legal system," I said, standing up from the table. "Congratulations, you're about to discover what happens when you try to defraud someone who plays the game better than you do." The hunter had become the hunted, and she was just beginning to understand the magnitude of her miscalculation. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Within 72 hours of our confrontation, my attorney had filed a comprehensive motion with the court that didn't just request divorce proceedings, but demanded criminal investigation into my wife's fraudulent activities. The evidence was so overwhelming that even her own lawyer advised her to cooperate fully to avoid felony charges. Her sister was the first to crack under pressure. When faced with potential criminal liability for her role in creating fraudulent documents, she provided a full confession detailing every aspect of their conspiracy. She handed over additional evidence I hadn't even discovered, including backup copies of their fabricated documents and detailed timelines of their planning sessions. The legal proceedings moved with unusual speed because fraud cases take priority in family court. My wife's attorney quickly distanced himself from her case once he realized the extent of her deception. No reputable lawyer wants to be associated with systematic fraud against the court system. Her attempts to salvage the situation were pathetic and desperate. She tried claiming she had been confused about the legal requirements, suggesting her documentation was simply overly thorough rather than fraudulent. When that failed, she attempted to portray herself as the victim of bad advice from online forums. The judge was not impressed. During the hearing, he described her actions as a calculated assault on the integrity of the family court system, and noted that her behavior represented precisely the kind of manipulation that legitimate divorce proceedings are designed to prevent. The financial consequences were devastating for her. Not only was her alimony claim completely dismissed, but she was ordered to pay my legal fees, court costs, and restitution for the resources wasted investigating her false claims. The total exceeded $40,000 money she didn't have since she had quit her consulting work as part of her dependency strategy. But the real satisfaction came from watching her social circle discover the truth. Her carefully maintained image as the devoted wife who had sacrificed everything for her marriage was replaced by the reality of someone who had attempted to commit fraud against the legal system. Friends who had supported her during the difficult divorce suddenly distanced themselves when they learned about the conspiracy. Her sister faced professional consequences as well. The California Board of Accountancy launched an investigation into her role in creating fraudulent financial documents, threatening her professional license. Their family relationships were permanently damaged when other relatives learned about the extent of their deception. The most poetic justice came in the form of her own evidence being used against her. Every document she had created to support her alimony claim became proof of her fraudulent intent. Her meticulous planning, which she had thought would guarantee her financial security, instead guaranteed her legal and financial destruction. The divorce settlement was finalized in record time. She received exactly what she had contributed to the marriage, nothing. Her false claims of financial dependency were not only rejected, but used as evidence of her manipulative character. The judge noted that anyone capable of such systematic deception could hardly be considered financially helpless. I kept the house, all marital assets, and my complete financial independence. More importantly, I kept my dignity and self-respect by refusing to be manipulated by someone who had treated our marriage as a long-term investment strategy. The final irony was perfect. She had calculated alimony maximization down to the dollar, creating spreadsheets and timelines to extract maximum financial benefit from our divorce. But she had failed to calculate the most important variable, the possibility that her target might be smarter than she was. Her maximum speed to exit had been 2 years of planning and preparation. My maximum speed to exit was accomplished in less than 6 months, with her paying for the privilege of being exposed as a fraud. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that she had moved back in with her parents, struggling to find work because potential employers were wary of hiring someone with a recent fraud investigation in their background. Her sister had lost her accounting license and was working retail while appealing the board's decision. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My business had grown significantly, partly because I was no longer distracted by the psychological warfare that had been my marriage. I had learned valuable lessons about recognizing manipulation and protecting myself from people who view relationships as transactions. The experience taught me that sometimes the best defense against calculated predators is to be more calculated than they are. She had treated our marriage like a business deal, so I had responded by becoming a better businessman than she could ever be. Her plan had been perfect in every detail except one. She had underestimated her target, and in the end, that single miscalculation had cost her everything she had schemed to gain. The game was over, and there was no question about who had won.